Good afternoon, my friends. Today we are talking a little bit more of a somber topic taking place on March 25th, 1911, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. It's a very tragic event in United States history, something that isn't ever really talked about. We'll get into it right after this. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire is one of the deadliest disasters in the history of the New York City, taking place in Manhattan, and is one of the most deadly industrial accidents in United States history. It caused 146 deaths, 123 women and 23 men. They either fell to their deaths because they jumped out of the building, which took place on the 8th, ninth, and 10th stories. They inhaled too much smoke, or the fire took their lives. Most of the workers were of Italian or Jewish descent immigrants, all between the ages of 14 and 23. The owner of the building had a proclivity for hiring immigrants because he knew they would work for less and they were less likely to unionize against him depending on what happened. So he hired immigrants because it was cheaper and there were less repercussions for him. A lot of the deaths were because the owner and regular practice at the time would be to lock the doors so people couldn't take unauthorized breaks and could not steal from the company, which is why now all of the signs that we have on doors say that the doors are to remain unlocked during business hours or when the building is occupied. I know I see these signs everywhere I go. Pretty much every building I walk into, there's a sign on the door that says this door is to remain unlocked. Specifically because of this accident, it's reshaped a lot of safety practices for the better. A little bit of background on the company. It was called the Triangle Waste Company, and it took up the 8th, ninth, and 10th floors of the 10-story Ash Building in the northwest corner of Green Street and Washington Place. This business made women's blouses, also known as shirtwaists, and the factory employed about 500 workers, mostly young Italian and Jewish immigrants. They were working 52 hours all week, 7 days straight, and they were making between $7 and $12 a week. This would be between $242 and $415 a week in today's currency, or about $5 and $8 an hour. So how did the fire start and what exactly happened? Not a whole lot is actually determined. There is what the fire marshal says, but then there are some reports of a couple other things that could have happened. But at 4:40 in the afternoon, just as the workday was concluding, a fire flared up in the scrap bin underneath one of these tables in the northeast corner on the 8th floor. The first fire alarm was set at 4:45 by a passerby. Now, both owners of the factory were actually in the warehouse. After everything was said and done, the fire marshal concluded that it was due to either a still lit match or a cigarette butt. Now, smoking had been banned in the factories in New York. So a lot of people want to argue that. But it was known that people would sneak cigarettes in, especially the people who were cutting at the tables. And when they would exhale the smoke, it would just be right into their lapels like this. But in any event, there were hundreds of pounds of scrap from the cutting left in this bin that had caught fire. It hadn't been emptied in months. Plus, there were a lot of hanging fabrics. So pretty much everything was flammable, except for the steel trim. That was it. Just the steel around the tables. Other than that, it was just kind of a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. Now, the New York Times also says that the fire could have been started by the engines of the sewing machines, that they had been running nonstop for hours upon hours and days upon days, which can, yeah, I can kind of understand that. But after, going reading the back and forth, I could see it being a cigarette butt or, a match. Now, there was somebody who was able to get in contact from the eighth floor where the fire had started by phone to get to the 10th floor. But there was not really an audible alarm to contact anybody on the ninth floor. The first warning that there was a fire to the ninth floor arrived at the same time as the fire. And at this point, all the exits, the freight elevators, the fire escape, everything had been covered in fire, so there was no real way out aside from taking a plunge, which I couldn't imagine falling for that long. So now, what about the fire department? What about anything that the city could have done? Well, unfortunately, the fire department had arrived, but they were unable to put out the fire, and the ladders that they possessed only reached to the seventh floor. There was an estimated 62 people that had jumped to their death. The only other way that people had escaped was to go all the way to the roof, which by then they were on the 10th floor with nowhere else to go. Reading this quote directly from William Gunn Shepard, who was a reporter at the tragedy, said, and I quote, I learned a new sound that day, a sound more horrible than description can picture, the thud of a speeding living body on stone sidewalk. 62 people jumped to their deaths on this day because of many, many safety flaws, I'm going to say. The locked doors allowed the owners of the building to check women's purses to make sure that nothing had been stolen. It would also limit people's unauthorized breaks. I'm glad this is no longer a thing. I'm glad that there are many escapes from any kind of fire that could happen and that businesses aren't so worried about something being stolen by an employee that they compromise safety. This might sound horrible and make me think, oh, maybe stealing is good. No, stealing is not good, but nothing should ever compromise safety. So now this is where it gets really infuriating because to me these two men are absolutely guilty. They were being charged on first and second degree manslaughter beginning mid-April. The jury acquitted them, but found that they were guilty in wrongful death, so they had to pay out $75 per deceased victim, which came out to about $445. That's not justice. They ignored blatant and obvious safety issues. Locking any kind of doors should be seen as safety. There were no fire alarms. There was no way to get to the ninth floor in time to notify anyone of the fire. Keep in mind, it started off in the eighth. They telephoned to the 10th. The ninth, by the time anyone got to the ninth floor, the fire had broken out to the ninth floor. There was nowhere to go from there. These two men should have been held liable. They should have spent their time in jail, and only $75 per deceased victim is nowhere near enough to me. It should have been a lot more. The insurance company paid $64,000 more than the reported losses, too. That money should have been divvied out to other people, not to the two owners of the buildings. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Does this make your blood boil a little bit? I know it does for me. It's weird. I don't normally get passionate over stuff like this. I don't know, I guess in old age, I've become a lot more compassionate towards people. Tell me what you think down below. Next year's video on this day is going to be a lot more impactful. My wife and I have a plan for it. I'm doing a long format video soon on Harry Houdini, who was born as of yesterday, I believe in 1875. Don't quote me. Let me check my notes. 1874. Yeah, he was born on 18 into 1874. If you want to get that long format video, be sure to subscribe. Come back for more. I think I might be finding a more consistent upload schedule, maybe like Tuesdays and Thursdays, maybe with a meme review on Friday. We'll see how all that goes. We'll see how everything pans out. In any event, have a wonderful day.